on behalf of Krishnamurti Foundation Kolkata, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Nandini Patnaik and all of you. Just to introduce myself, I am Kamal Thacker and I am associated with the KFI in Kolkata. Before I talk about the program, I would like to touch on a special connection that our center has had with Orissa. In the late 80s, the late K. Patnaik from Qatar set up a self-study center in Kolkata with the view to make the teachings of Krishnamurti, Theosophy and also many other seers known in this city. He used his own resources to set up the center in Kolkata. In 2001, he donated the building to KFI and requested the foundation to take over the running of the center. So it's important for everybody to know that our center in Kolkata owes everything to the late J.K. Patnaik. I had the good fortune to meet him during his visits to Calcutta. For us at the center, the late Patnaik ji is a silent inspiration because of his legacy of simplicity, innate goodness, and an intense devotion to inquiry, to the truth. And I may mention an amazing sense of humor too. Just to give you just one example, on one of his visits, I asked Patnaik ji what it was like to absorb the enormous wisdom of Krishnamurti during those countless talks which he attended in London. So he laughed, and this was quite typical of him. He would brush aside any serious thing sometimes with a laugh. And he said, I honestly don't know because I was often lulled into sleep. And again he laughed. On a more serious note, he added, maybe just being there in that presence was enough. Nandini happens to be the niece of Sri J.K. Patnaik, and though she and her husband Soumya live in the US, her association with the KFI, with the KFI Cuttack Center, with the teachings of Krishnamurti is as strong as ever. When we got to know about Nandini's second book, with an intriguing title, Living is Not a Choice, You, Me and Krishnamurti, we were very curious to know more. Her first book was Beyond the Paths. So that is how this program for today has come about. So when we asked Nandini if she could talk about the book, her own journey and how the characters in the book connect with the teachings of Krishnamurti, she agreed readily. Thankfully, technology makes it possible to connect beyond boundaries, both national and within India. After the talk, please do feel free to ask questions. Enough time has been set aside for audience interaction. I think that dialogue, Nandini says, is as important as the talk. So with these few words, I would like to invite Nandini to talk to us about the book, her journey, and a lot more. Over to you, Nandini.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, all my friends, for giving me the space to talk about my book and a little bit about the teachings of K. I really liked when Kamalda talked about my uncle, because I'm going to take the story from there and go back a few years backward to start the real journey. It was many years back, like around 45 years back, when I was in my early teens, and my uncle J.K. Patnaik was living in London. Every year he would come to India, to Cuttack, and it was a kind of annual ritual for all of us to go and meet him at the station and bring him home to my grandparents' house, ancestral house. He used to arrive with big suitcases and bags, and we were very young and we were just waiting to see what kind of gifts had come for us. Toys, chocolates, all those things. But we were pretty he was a very serious man, so we didn't immediately ran to him, but we stayed just behind the window to see what was coming out of those suitcases. He would open those suitcases one after the other, and there were books, 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 and still more books. Which youngster would love such an uncle? We were scared of him. We didn't say anything. No chocolates, no clothes, no toys. He didn't even bother to say that, sorry, I didn't bring anything for you. And those books were hefty books, heavy books. I hated him, really. Then this continued to happen for many years. Every year the same drama would be enacted. Suitcases, books, and disappointment from the younger cousins. My brother was grown up, so he probably understood better than I did, but I didn't like that kind of mama. At that time, he was building two organizations, one in Cuttack and one in Kolkata. The Cuttack one was called Self-Education Trust, and the one in Kolkata, which was much bigger, was Self-Education Center. And when the books came to the family, my father was cataloging them, keeping them all in order. I was thinking that all the books had come for us, because I was everything. I was the center of the universe as a little kid. So then I came to know that the books were not for us. They were all for Kolkata. There were rare books, like books on occultism, pyramidology, color therapy, kundalini, meditation, yoga, theosophy, and of course a lot of Krishnamurti books. If there was a single copy, they would be immediately kept aside for Kolkata. If there are two copies, one will be for Kolkata, one will be for the reserve in Kolkata, and the third copy would come to Cuttack. Would you like such a mama? So the books started piling up in our house, in my parents' house. And one day I overheard my mother asking, "You are making so many books. Why don't you split them? Why don't you divide 50%, half of them to Kolkata, half of them to Cuttack?" I happened to be there, and I still remember, honestly, I'm not exaggerating. He said, "You know what? Bengal is the base for spiritual revolution." He said, Kolkata, by Kolkata he meant Bengal. He said that is the place where spiritual mind has got the environment, and that is where you can expect any kind of spiritual journey to start. Bengalis know how to read spiritual books. Today I might sound a little bit like racist. I'm not being racist, but this is what I heard him say.
I heard you.
And since then, I had been longing to see what these Calcutta people are, that they took all these books and they are the hub for spiritual hub. Time passed. Self-Education Trust and Self-Education Center were donated to Krishnamurti Foundation, and eventually they became Krishnamurti Foundation India Cuttack Center and Kolkata Center. Things changed, developed, people died, but the bond has forever been there between Kolkata Center and Cuttack Center. I remember when my uncle was very fond of me. I don't know why, I never did anything for him, but he loved me so much. He would ask, whenever he discussed anything serious, he would always ask me or let me sit by his side. I don't know why, I never understood anything. I didn't understand theosophy, I didn't understand Krishnamurti, but what I remember, I was always sitting by his side. And when I became older and realized what I was doing, people are doing around me, my mother and my aunt, they were forever translating books of Krishnamurti. So I got interested, I started reading Krishnamurti. And one day I asked my uncle to tell me what was the meaning of dissemination. Everybody was talking about dissemination of the teaching. And what he told me was very simple. He said, Nandini, if you see something very beautiful, very valuable, very truthful. And you see that you want to offer the whole thing to the public, to the people. Just offering is dissemination. Offering is the truthful, offering of the truthful thing, the beautiful thing, the right thing. That is dissemination. And he said, translating is one way of dissemination. You can also disseminate by writing about your own experiences and showing how they are related to the teaching. 3 things he said are necessary for dissemination: your honesty, your attitude, and your dedication. My uncle passed away. Before he passed away, I had written one biography of Krishnamurti in Oriya. And I remember the first time he went to Kolkata, he carried a book, a copy of that Oriya book to Rukna Sarkar auntie. I don't know if anybody still remember her. And she told Rukna auntie, Rukna, this is a biography of K in Oriya. Learn Oriya and translate it into Bengali. He also said that the same thing to Manju Sarkar auntie. But I was like, I was getting distracted. I got married, I had family, I had so many nice things to do, not to think about Krishnamurti. Then my uncle passed away. Things changed. And I decided to write a book, a few things, whatever I could do on K. And my first book was The Making of a World Teacher. The purpose of the book was, it's a very small book. I might have it here. I didn't check that. The purpose of the book was the youngsters, like 15, 16, 17 years old. They do not know. Obviously, many of them did not know much about Krishnamurti. So I was trying to introduce to this younger crowd the man with a little bit of teaching. My second book was Beyond the Pathless. And Sayan, I know, has a copy of it. Yes, Beyond the Pathless. This is a book which has a layout which is very similar to my last book, Living is Not a Choice. In Beyond the Pathless, I introduced the life of K through anecdotes. Because I love stories. And I can never understand a person who doesn't love stories. Like my husband doesn't like stories. He doesn't tell me stories. So I thought that people who haven't read K, who haven't heard about K, who are not interested in K, might be interested in the life of K, because the life can be brought in form of small anecdotes, very interesting anecdotes. K as a little child taking castor oil, who would not be interested in that? K as a young boy who was seeing the fairies, who wouldn't be interested in asking, are there fairies? So I collected all those anecdotes and made them into a book. But my real purpose was not the anecdotes, or not introducing K as a man, but really it was to introduce the teachings of K. So what I did, at the end of every chapter, every anecdote, I annexed a portion of the literature of the teaching of K, original teaching. My intention was, after reading the story, the reader would be tempted to see, what does the man say? How the two things are connected. This portion was called A Grain of Sand. It is actually a grain of sand, because when you walk on the beach, all the beach is made of grains of sand. But when you take a piece of sand, a little grain of sand in your hand, you see, it's nothing. But that nothing makes everything. So even a small piece of teaching, just one sentence, is good enough to make you see what the man says and how it applies to life. After Beyond the Pathless, I wrote Living is Not a Choice. And I was trying to see a deeper connection between everyday experience and the teachings. Life is not separate from the teachings. By then, I had come to live in Los Angeles and I had started working. My life was changing fast. My son was growing up in front of my eyes. All those years of rebellion, all those years of disobedience, all those years of when I started understanding him, he understood me. On one side, family. On the other side, I had my work. And that was actually opening the door to the whole world. My students came from all different parts of the world, all different walks of life. The bruised woman who came with scars on her back because she had been badly abused by her husband in El Salvador. The man who ran away from Iraq after being chased by the Christians by the Muslims because he was a Christian. And the young boy who was tempted. All these experiences came to me. And I was thinking all along, what is the application of the teaching? Because I had started reading K a lot. What was the application of this teaching unless each and every person sees it in their own life? That is when I started imagining the framework of living is not a choice. My uncle had told me many years back, you can always link the teaching with real life. And that is where I got a scope, the chance, the opportunity to link life with the teaching. Like a grain of sand here, I have appended meeting life. And for quite some time, I didn't know there was a book, Meeting Life by Mary Luchens. I didn't know that, but I thought that meeting life is a very appropriate term and I put it as a subtitle of my book. After every story, there is a meeting life which contains a portion of the excerpt from some of the original teaching. Now, the purpose of writing this book was, again, I was thinking, if a person has read K, there was no need to read these books, or this book, the stories. But what about the many people who haven't heard about K, or even if they've heard about K, they know that they think that K is a philosopher. So I'm not interested in philosophy. So my purpose was to attract those people who took interest in literature, in fiction, in stories, and through stories they would smoothly glide into the teaching. Because K says that the teaching is not in the books. The real teaching is not in the videos. It is not in the audios either. The real teaching, these are the words that you hear, that you read. And the words are never the things. The real teaching lies when you hold the teaching and experiment with yourself. When you hold it as a mirror and look at yourself, that is a teaching. Not reading the teaching is the teaching. So I thought that these my stories can attract some readers and lead them into the teaching. They would read portions of the teaching. If they like, they can get a like the original book and read them. If they don't like, they can just trash it. The stories do not have any values. So that is how Living is Not a Choice was born. So many people came to help me, my brother and of course Soumya, my son. Everybody helped me a lot. So Soumitra Das and Kavita, they tremendously supported me. Now, talking about the book, there are two things: the content of the book and the layout of the book. By the content of the book, I mean the stories. It's a small book. 9 stories are there. This is just a very thin book. 9 stories are there. And in my stories, in that book, the characters are in the center and the plot are in the periphery. What I mean by that is, it is all the character that matters in the story. And who are my characters? Each of my character is a complexity of characteristics. By characteristics, I mean greed. I have greed. You have greed. I'm hoping. I have greed. You have greed. The characters have that quality, that characteristic of greed. I have misery. I suffer. My characters also have the characteristic of suffering. I have joy. I have pleasure. I have desire. I have pain. I have a demand. I have devotion. All these characteristics are made into a bundle which is portrayed in the characters. And what are the characters that do not have problems? A character in the real life, if a character doesn't have problem, if a person doesn't have problem, that means either we are asleep or we are dead. So my characters have problems, and those problems are not only local problems, they are universal problems, global problems. And I want to see with these stories, is the problem outside the person or is it inside the problem, inside the person? That is one of the points I have tried to express through the stories. Each character, even the major characters and the minor characters. Now coming to the layout, as I told you, every story is appended by a small section of the excerpt of K called Meeting Life, and there is a connection between the story and whatever the teaching says about the problems. So I hope there is a smooth passage, and the real intent of the story, of the book, is reading the teaching, understanding that all the problems can be looked at from a completely different approach than the traditional approach. The traditional approach is, the moment there is a problem, I want to solve that problem. That is the traditional approach. Everybody wants to solve their problems. And if they're solved, they're not problems anymore. But here, K perhaps, I'm not saying he does, but he perhaps says that, can you end the problem without looking at a solution so that it is completely uprooted? So that is my layout of the book. I have my content and the layout part of it. Now I would like all of us to go and take a peek into the book, into some of the stories. So today actually I'm planning, instead of, I know it's very boring to listen to a person for a long time. I get bored. And so I decided to make a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation. And Sudeshna has been so sweet to agree to help me out for reading aloud the small excerpts from the book. Thank you, Sudeshna. So what I'm proposing is, let's go into the presentation. And since it is on the screen, I'm really not very good at this technology. So it might be sometimes a little bit messy. So please bear with that. Okay? Sayan, Kamaldas, shall we do that now?
Yes, yes.
Go over to the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to get onto the share mode? Then you can.
Yes, I'm going to share screen. Just a minute. Can everybody listen to me and see the screen at the same time?
Absolutely perfect.
Yes. Okay. So this is my screen. Living is not a choice, which is very paradoxical. Living is a choice, but I am saying in the story that living is not a choice. And to start with, I would like to ask a few questions. Not as much to get answers to the questions, but just I want you to stay with the question for a few seconds. The answer is not important, the questions are important, and it is important that you really take the question into yourself and put yourself in that position and think. Don't think of an answer, just think of the question. So it is you as a person. Don't change your characteristics, don't change your temperament, just stay put, stay as you are. You are a cop. You may not be a cop, but you are a cop. You bust into the criminal's house, a very poor man. You were about to handcuff him, and then you suddenly see the old mother of the criminal is lying on the bed. She is sick, old, and pleading you not to take away his son. What will you do? Here is another question. You are a man of integrity. You know what you are. You know who you are. Your self-respect is there with you. One fine morning, they rob you of all that you stood for in your life. Your honesty. They say you are a dishonest man. You are a liar. You are an immoral person. You are a poison to the society. They allege you. Everybody. You are completely denuded of all that you had stood for your entire life. What will you do? Fight, flight, freeze? What are you going to do? Abject poverty is neither Indian nor non-Indian. It is global. Every country has it. In America, I have seen it. A father is coming with his 3-year-old daughter in absolute cold weather and selling out the painted fine coats for a few dollars. Poverty. So you are a man who has children, no money, no resources. Your children are dying of hunger, and you are walking by the street. You see in the yard of a rich man fruit or some kind of food. What will you do? Your children are crying at home. Beg, steal, or walk past. So I say, there have been answers all along. People have always answered these questions, but the questions are forever staying. They were there in the past, they are in the present. I do not know what's going to happen in the future. But the questions are there. And the question is a question of choice. When I asked you, what are you going to do? That means I am as if, I don't say I did that, but as if I'm asking you, what is your choice? To do this or to do that? To beg or to steal or to walk past? We all think that we live by choice. What to eat, where to go, what book to read, whether to follow the religion or to walk away from the religion. The choice and the choice and the choice. But the real question is that what have all these choices done to the world, to the humanity? So the meeting live section is asking those questions, and it is telling whether the choices are real or they are imaginary. And what are the chances that the choices you take are actually the real choices? Okay. We can do a little bit of discussion later, but first let's come to the stories. This is one of my stories. The name of the story is A Penny for Identity. And as you can see, the story is about a character whose name is Mijanur. He came from Bangladesh. He was a student of mine. About this age. He was looking different, but about this age. This story begins with a folk song in Odia, which I translated into English. Sing a song of riches, sing a song of rags, a penny in my pocket can bring me down the stars. So the penny in the pocket, everybody when they set into the world, they step into the world, they have a penny in their pocket. And that penny is not the penny of currency or money. That is the penny of identity, of dreams. Who am I? What do I want to do? What are my dreams? How am I going to achieve my dreams? And this notion of starting with a dream is particularly true in the United States. People come to buy the American dream. And what is the American dream? More riches, more money, more freedom, more space, not physical space but mental space, equality. All these things are a part of the penny which we carry in our pocket. Even if the people they do not come out of their country, out of their own countries or India or anywhere, they also have dreams and they also have that penny of identity. And my character Mijanur was such a person who was asking all along, who am I without my name? Every person has a name. When you ask, who are you? You introduce by your name, then what you do, where you come from, what are your accomplishments, what are your achievements. Have you ever thought, who are you if not me, but somebody, somehow, all your identities, those pieces of identities are taken away from you? Who are you? The real name tag is not what you are called. That is not your first and last name. The real name tag is what you have done or what you want to do, what you haven't done. That is the name tag. And what happens to the man who comes to the United States and becomes a student who has absolutely nothing accept his textbooks, what happens to him? So that is the story about his character. And I really loved him because he always used to pronounce my name as Nandini. So when my students were calling me Nandini or Professor Patnaik, he would say Professor Nandini. And to be honest, I had a special weakness for my Bangladeshi students because they spoke Bengali and I understood Bengali. Sometimes I would deliberately walk behind them with a short distance to overhear what they were talking. And very fluently they were talking. Today I have made some very good fish curry. I'm going to make some rice and eat at night. Sometimes they would say, did you see the teacher? She's such a nice teacher. I was feeling so happy because that was the only non-English language I was understanding in my college. So I was always following Mijanur to see what he was doing, but he was so respectful that he never let me walk behind him. He would always stop and let me go ahead of him. I didn't like that. I wanted to listen to their conversation. And so this is something off topic and very popular among my Bangladeshi students. Every Bangladeshi student comes to make sure that he, she and all their relatives attend my class. They are my pride. Okay. Well, Sudeshna dear, can you please read aloud the portion of the story?
Yeah, A Penny for Identity. On another occasion, we were discussing American culture in class. Everyone narrated the story about American values and moralities. It was a very lively discussion and we were together exploring American values as opposed to others. I noticed Mijanur was very quiet that day. He was neither saying anything nor listening to what was being said. His gaze was blankly fixed on the whiteboard, but he was not there, lost as though in some faraway land. I signaled others to pause for a while and called him. Mijanur, you are older in age and must have seen much more of what's going on here. What do you think happens in this country when family values are in question? Oh, that was like a sharp whack on his face. His entire being exploded aggressively on my question. His eyes emitted a fiery sparks and words flew out of his mouth like gushes of fume from a cindered oven. Mijanur was unleashed, in no mood to even take a breath. What do you call this a country? He charged at me. Values, culture? Parents here don't even know how to raise their children. They don't know how to discipline them. Children here don't know what respect is. How do you honor elders in the family? How to honor elders in the family? He continued on and on. I have seen enough of this culture. Everybody is going to destroy themselves if they take up American family values. If it were my country, I'd have disciplined them in a single day, brought them back online if they acted up. I would have whacked them with my belt. How can we call this culture? What kind of culture is this? My grown-up granddaughter goes on to sleepover parties at a friend's house. My high school going grandson is barely 17. He smokes and drinks beer with his friends. If his father tries to discipline him, he threatens to call the police. And you call this morality? Is this what family values mean to you? This country has already gone to dogs. Mijanur's speech seems to be never ending. The whole class sat in a quiet assent, while many of them shared his views. Soon some began to nod their heads in approval. I was taken aback by his zest. That day, Mijanur was beyond himself, even after I tried to pacify him.
So this was Mijanur, older man from Bangladesh, and we were talking about choice. His choice versus the choice of American youngsters. Where does choice come from? Your culture, your upbringing, your education, your society, your parents, your neighbors, your husband, wife, everybody that you see, the books, everything. So is choice something which is going to solve the problems of the society, of discipline, indiscipline, order, disorder, respect, disrespectfulness? These are the questions, these are the problems. Can choice solve them globally? Let's go to the next story, The Souls of an Emigrant Shows. In fact, this is one of my most favorite story in the whole collection. Not because of the story, but because I could see the man who had been chased out of his country. I imagined I came to this country out of choice because I wanted to. I could have gone back anytime. But what if a man is chased out of the country, out of his house, out of his neighborhood, out of his city, out of his family, friend circle, everybody? And as though he was asking this question all along, how far can I run? He had been running ever since 2000. He was a refugee from Mosul, Iraq in 2000. And he was a qualified, experienced motorcar mechanic who owned a flourishing family business in the city of Mosul in 2000, until 2000. He spoke Armenian, he spoke Iraqi, he didn't speak English. And when he came to the United States, to California, Southern California, Los Angeles, he was washing cars with a bucket in his hand and a soap in his hand. The owner of the car garage was now cleaning and washing everybody's car. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, and he was looking at every person, not knowing how to say thank you, what to say. He had no English language expertise. And what was he doing in my class, which was an advanced writing class? Such a person in the late evening, after working for 9 hours in the motor car, washing cars, when he was coming to my class, how could I expect him to pay attention to me? And he had been really tired and exhausted of running, asking, how far can I run? My legs are already tired. Yes, Subheshna, please.
Yes. The soles of an emigrant's shoes. Aram blinked at the projector screen inattentively, oblivious of what I was lecturing. He flinched in his dream. Time passed, and then came the ICs. The year was 2014. Staunch fanatics began demanding that Christians must leave their land or pay exuberant taxes. It was their land, they demanded, a land of austere Muslims. The society turned against Aram. His own friends frowned upon him. His house, his motor garage, his children's schools, even the roads he and his children walked upon became dangerous for them. Aram didn't know what to do. He just waited, not knowing a thing. Time began to rot. The sun wasn't up yet, and the winter morning was slow with gloom. It was as though the morning was scared to come. About 4 o'clock in the morning, Aram woke to shrieks of an unearthly kind. It was like something he had never heard before. The sound was getting closer minute by minute, and there were gunshots and cries. Eerie waves of chaos were traveling in his direction. Aram woke up his family, asking them to get ready to leave as quickly as possible, or they may get killed. In a few minutes, there were more explosions, gunshots, and more unearthly screams. The ladies and children huddled together in fear as their men stood bundled up, their hearts too scared to beat. Bang, 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 there were 3 loud kicks on his door. The IC soldiers had arrived, and they were not sparing anyone. Now they were there just outside the house. Inside there was desperation and fear. Another loud bang on the door, and his brother opened the door. In the dim light, he saw figures covered in scarves and holding glistening barrels of assault rifles. He heard muffled cries of panic from within the house. The men at the door were emissaries of IC soldiers. They gave Aram and his family only 5 minutes of life. Flee or die, they said. 12 people, 5 minutes, or death. Time had stopped. The emissaries searched the hands and folds of their clothes and ransacked them all. Bare-handed, they had to flee. They joined hundreds of Christians on the street. The sea of kafirs, non-believers, scrambling through the main streets, herded like animals. They were told the IC soldiers were marching ahead, and those who stayed back or dithered would die. Later, in a refugee camp, Aram learned how the whole neighborhood was set on fire soon afterwards, how their houses were ransacked, and how all images and pictures of Christ were burnt into ashes. He also learned how the IC soldiers came in open jeeps and took away all memories that people like Aram had built for ages. The Islamic State's flags swept away the past of entire communities and their beliefs in just a few seconds. Aram became a political refugee in an instant, denuded of all his past.
I'm sorry about the screen. I couldn't contain the whole content in one page. I'm sorry.
No, I have it.
Oh, yeah, you have it here. Yes, with the others. So, 12 people, 5 minutes. Wonderful equation. And they were really coming with guns, and people had been killed. A well-settled man runs for his life, with his family. What is the choice here? Whose choice? People who are coming after them, their choice? Or people who are running away for their life, their choice? Whose choice is this? How does choice determine life? I have to tell you something. I'm running short of time, but I have to tell you something very quickly. Only thing I prayed during that semester that I wanted Aram to pass the class. That was really, I was praying for him because he wasn't a good student. He couldn't write an essay. But all I wanted him to pass the class and not to have another injury on his head that he felt here too. This is a story which did not appear in the first edition, and this is my new edition has it, The Trail of the Troll. And this story is actually a combination of 2 stories. The first story is a folk tale, and everybody knows that, how the troll appears before the man and says that if you don't give me any word, I'm going to eat you up. That is the story. And the man walks on the trail of the troll singing, and the troll is singing, bungle success and riches, I will fulfill all your wishes. Take it quick and ask for more, else you I shall devour. So the more and more and more, moving upward and upward and upward in your social achievement. The question is, where do I stop? Do I stop, or do I go on up and up and up till I completely crash? The question is, we all run after something, better house, better position, more money, more happiness, more pleasure. Should we stop, or should we go on running after this more and more? So this is also another story which happened in my neighborhood. And Sudeshna, I would request. Yes, this is something which happened in the year of 2000 after the stock market crashed. The story is related to this incident.
The trail of the troll. Narendra sat by himself in his posh house. He had been drinking since morning, while his world was spinning around his head. He had staked almost everything right. He had staked almost everything right before the crash, and the crash was sure to make it take him down completely. It was a bad decision, worst choice ever. Why did he have to put in everything into this one basket? His business, his houses, and much more would now be gone, and he could see it coming. There was no escape. He cursed himself for what he had recklessly done in the intoxication of his never-ending success. Narendra was losing his mind. He had stopped going to office and stayed on medication for some time. Home became hell. He had become a very intolerant and difficult. The couple often fought. It seemed to be heading towards total breakdown. In the middle of the night, his neighbors often heard him yell, and then the noise of breaking glasses. This had become a frequent thing in his house. Neighbors sympathized, but when it became a regular affair, they warned him, telling him that they would call the police if it happened again. The next week, the police came, responding to a neighbor's call. Narendra was out of control. He had threatened to assault his wife after a bickering turned into a nasty fight. Narendra was taken into custody and spent the night at the police station. By morning, his humiliation crushed him. He returned home to still greater depression and far more agitated. His teenage children scorned him too and stopped listening to him. His wife threatened him with divorce for this horrendous behavior, as Narendra was now completely out of his mind. The troll was there. It is always there to entice you, to feed upon its trade, to become somebody, to achieve something. It is always the more and yet more. The one who refuses the troll is simple, a nobody. There is benediction when you are nobody. When the troll is not, you are nobody.
When the troll is not, you are nobody. But we want to be somebody. That is the trail of the troll. In my small capacities, I will try to be a little bit better. In your big capacities, you will try to be somebody grander. But the more is the troll. Kamalda and Sayan, can I borrow 5 more minutes of your time?
Oh, absolutely, Nandini.
Yeah, I know, I have this. This is the last story. Yes, this is in the book, it has the first place, but here I am putting it at the last. Who is the culprit? the culprit is a victim or the victim is the culprit? This is a question that the society is putting before all of us. This is a story about the guy looked exactly like this, but only he was a little bit chubbier and heftier and a merrier guy. I see some of your faces like that, like in that age group. And he was the oldest teenage son who was well built, rather hefty, with a broad and squarish face. He wore his hair in a typical Mohawk style with a short spikes like you see in the picture on the top and the clean shaven on the sides. We walked side by side. He was walking inside a store and the store was full of glitters, attractive commodities. And such a young mind was trying to get something, was getting attracted towards something. But what happens? The crime entered and the question is being asked. Who is the culprit and who is the victim? Who is responsible? Are you responsible? Am I responsible? Is the society responsible? Who is responsible for any social crime? Yes, Sudeshna, please.
The iPod. I moved my car to the side and looked closely. I saw Omar standing with his chin tucked inside his neck and his hands were handcuffed to his back. He was standing motionless like a statue. His father was standing next to him with his gaze fixed on the floor. A few steps apart, Abuelita was lying on her back on the floor. She had lost consciousness, but they had brought her back and the paramedics had been called. Omar's mother had bent down and was resting her palm on Abuelita's head as she sobbed quietly. I went a step closer. From there I could see Omar's hands were shaking inside the handcuff. He lifted his head twice to look at his father and then at Abuelita. His broad, large face had turned pale and had visibly shrunk. He hadn't spotted me watching him. Even I didn't want him to see me. I asked one of the onlookers to describe how Omar had furtively picked up an iPod on the shelf and slid it into his trousers inner pocket. When the family was walking out through the gate after buying the TV, the security door alarm beeped. They were stopped and Omar's clothes were checked and the iPod was found. The manager of the store checked the surveillance images and saw the whole episode in action. Omar picking up the iPod from the shelf and keeping it in his underwear pocket without anyone noticing had been clearly captured on camera. Then an immediate phone call to the police and Omar and his family were detained until the police came and handcuffed the boy. I looked as far away from him as possible. I was too scared to face him and look into his eyes. I had begun feeling responsible for Omar, for his greed, for his helplessness. I was feeling responsible for his parents, for not being able to help. I was feeling responsible for the store manager, as well as who had turned into a complying part of the system called social safety. I was also feeling responsible for the cops who handcuffed Omar. They too were anything but compliant. I was feeling responsible for being myself. I felt responsible for everything. Yes, I was part of that entire system which created greed and punished greed. I lost myself in my thoughts as I stood at the store, oblivious of what was going on around me.
The story of Omar, hardly 17 years old. Beautiful things in the stores. He wants to possess one of those. Greed. So what is responsible for this kind of social crime, greed, or like he was punished because he couldn't control himself. So what were his choices? And who is responsible for building a society like this? Is Omar responsible? Is his parents responsible? Are his parents responsible? Do we have a share in this responsibility? That is a big question. In fact, I'm already on the borrowed time, so I will say that I have a few more slides, and I'm not going to say anything. I do not expect any of us to say anything, but I would like you to stay with the question. Just stay with the questions that are coming. Some questions, and let's stay with the questions for a while before we open for if you have any questions for me.